Morning. Good to see everyone. Glad you're here. I want to remind you, if you couldn't tell, that VBS begins tonight. And our VBS team has worked tirelessly this week, put in many hours, as you can tell, decorating, preparing, getting everything ready for tonight. 6 o'clock tonight, not at 5, 6 o'clock tonight, 6 o'clock every single night this week. Tonight, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evening. So make sure you're back. It's going to be a great time. We don't always decorate like this, but I think it's pretty cool when we do for Vacation Bible School. A lot of hard work has gone into this, so be here tonight at 6. Turn your Bibles to Matthew 25. You know, when we think about vacation and we make our plans, we put a lot of preparation into that, don't we? We've got to make sure, everything's taken care of at work. We got to make sure, that we got a place for the dog to go. Whatever the case is, all these preparations go into that. And if you think about it, we spend, all of us, a lot of time every single day preparing for something. We're preparing for a meal. We're preparing for guests. Or we're preparing for work, we're preparing for school, we're preparing for an assignment, a test, whatever the case is, an appointment, but we're always preparing for something. We spend so much time in this life preparing. Some people even go the extra mile and they go to the funeral home and they prepare, to have their funeral the way they want it and their burial, where it's going to be and all that stuff. And that's preparation. But how many of us prepare for eternity? We will spend far more time in eternity than we spend right here. We need to prepare for eternity. In Matthew 25, we're going to look at a familiar parable, the parable of the 10 virgins. Follow with me as I begin reading in verse 1. It says, "At that time the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps but did not take any oil with them. The wise, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight the cry rang out, 'Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him.' Then all the virgins woke up, trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out.' 'No,' they replied, 'there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves.' But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the others also came, and 'Sir,' they said, 'open the door for us.' But he replied, 'I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour.'" So this parable is teaching the importance of being prepared for eternity. Now specifically, it deals with the preparation of the second coming of Christ. You can turn back to Matthew 24, and there's great debate on Matthew chapter 24. Is it talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, 70 AD, or is it talking about the second coming of Christ, or is it talking about both? Well, I do know this, and scholars are split on that question. I do know this. It's talking about, at least part of it is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. It may all well be talking about that, and maybe none of chapter 24 of Matthew talks about the second coming of Christ. Possibly the tail end of it does, but I say all that to say this: Matthew 25 verse 1 is talking about the second coming of Christ. When he goes into this parable, these first 13 verses of chapter 25, he's talking about the second coming of Christ. The bridegroom is Jesus, and he will return to get his bride. We are the bride, and we must be prepared. The main point is found in verse 13, where he says, therefore keep watch because you do not know the day or the hour. We don't know if Jesus will return tomorrow, tonight, if it'll be 50 years from now, or when. We just know that he's going to come back. We must be prepared. That's where the emphasis is. Now, let me say this. One of two things will happen to all of us in here. Either death, or we'll be here to experience the second coming of Christ. The Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed for all men to die once. So we're either going to die or we're going to be here for the second coming of Christ. And either way, the main emphasis and point must be, we got to be prepared. We got to be ready if it be for the second coming or if it be for our own physical death. We must be prepared. So this parable that we're going to look at this morning is perfect to introduce and explore our congregational theme for the next year, which is preparing for eternity. Even our theme in our Wednesday night series is preparing for eternity. And so we're going to spend, the next year, and of course, when you think about such a broad topic as preparing for eternity, there's many texts in the Bible that we could look at. There's many topics in the Bible that we could draw from and learn from as we think about preparing for eternity. Okay, let's move on. Secondly, let's talk about, first of all, the 5 foolish virgins. The 5 foolish ones. They knew the bridegroom was coming. This wasn't a case of they just didn't believe, they didn't have faith. They knew the bridegroom was coming. No question about that. They believed that. But the 5 foolish virgins didn't take serious the need to be prepared. Something they could put off. Procrastination. Anybody do that? Well, I can get it tomorrow. It's not due till next week. I'll worry about the night before, right? We'll put it off till tomorrow. And so there may have been a little bit of that, but the 5 foolish, they had their lamps, but they had no oil. They didn't prepare properly. They were not diligent. They did not think ahead. They were not purposeful. Folks, when it comes to preparing for eternity, don't you think we ought to be purposeful? I got to tell you, we're purposeful when it comes to preparing for our jobs. We're purposeful when it comes to preparing our kids for school. School will begin in August, and you know what? We'll be prepared. We'll have their backpacks. We'll have their supplies. We'll have whatever they need to walk into that classroom on the first day of class. We will be prepared for that. And I think eternity, sadly, has become that out of sight, out of mind thing. It's not part of our daily discussion. It's not even part of our daily thought process. In fact, really, eternity is something that may not even enter our minds until we're right here on Sunday and we're talking about God, and then we think, oh yeah, the eternity thing. I'm going to be there one day. This is something we really need to give some thought to. We're going to spend more time in eternity than we spend here. You might even look at the 5 foolish and say, well, they were lazy. Yes, they were procrastinating, but they were lazy. And reality is, this probably applies to all of us. How many of us get lazy in our spiritual life? I mean, truth be known, we can get up on Sunday morning and we can go through our Sunday morning routine like with our eyes closed. I mean, we can come in, we can hear the guy do the announcements, we can sing the songs because we know them by heart, we can break the cracker, sip the juice, rush off to beat everybody to the restaurant, and we can go through that routine with our eyes closed. But how purposeful are we when it comes to eternity? How much thought do we give to eternity? How much thought do we give to, we're not going to be here forever? You say, well, the last funeral. And that kind of does. That kind of heightens the awareness when we're sitting in pews in a funeral home or a church building and there a coffin be before us. It does kind of heighten the awareness a little bit. We're thinking, we're not going to be here forever. But eternity is not our top topic of conversation. So notice what happens, verse 6 and following. At midnight the cry rang out, here's the bridegroom come out to meet him. All the virgins woke and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out. He was a long time in coming. And when he does come, they need oil for their lamps. They did not prepare. They did not think ahead. This was not thought out. There's a term I use in our house with our family, and it's simply this. Take care of your what? Business. Everybody's got some business. If it's doing your homework, take care of your business. If it's cleaning your room or helping out with chores, take care of your business. If it's getting up and getting to work on time, take care of your business. Everybody say, well, that's good. Those kids need to learn that. I got to tell you, we all need to learn it. Because we all have business to take care of. And we need to take care of our business. And the 5 foolish virgins, they didn't take care of their business. They're like putting it off. It's no big deal. And it's no big deal until the bridegroom shows up. And the 5 foolish ones are begging the wise, saying, would you just help us out here? We could sure use a little bit of your oil. But they respond, they say, no, there may not be enough for both us and you. Really, your only choice is go buy some. But while they were on their way to buy oil, the bridegroom arrived. See if they had just been prepared. If they'd just done their homework on the front end. If they just put a little more effort into it. How many times do we look back on stuff in our life and say, you know what, if I just put a little more into that, if I just tried a little harder, if I just put my heart into that. But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut, and when the door shut, it shut. Later the others also came. Sir, they said, open the door for us. And it's interesting, his response. He basically says no, but he says, I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Maybe the bridegroom and this wedding banquet that's a representation of heaven, in my opinion. Maybe the bridegroom and the wedding banquet just really weren't a priority to the 5 foolish. Maybe it was one of those, well, if we make it, we may. If we don't, we don't. And I hope eternity is not like that for you. In fact, in Luke 14, Jesus would say it like this when it comes to having a relationship with Him. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus in Luke 14:25. There it is. I'm going to also read verse 25. And turning to them, He said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and his mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And what Jesus is saying is, I want to be the top priority. Husbands, I want to be the priority over your wife. Wives, I want to be the priority over your husband. Parents, I want to be the priority over your children. I want to be your number one, is what he's saying. I want you to love me more than anyone else. And here's the thing, if we do, we'll be thinking about eternity. If we love Him the way we're supposed to, if He's the priority, we're going to prepare for eternity. We're going to go above and beyond because it's going to matter. Reality is the things that are important to us, we take care of. It's important for me to have a house, have a home, for my family. So you know what? I make sure I make that payment every month. You can look at the records, never miss it. Okay? It's important to me to make sure there's food on the table. We know where Walmart is. Okay? I mean, there are things, my family's important. I'm going to take care of them. I got to tell you, the 5 foolish had the wedding banquet been really a priority to them, they would have gone above and beyond and made sure they were prepared. They would have made the proper preparation. So the foolish 5 return, and they're not allowed in. In fact, it's interesting. He says, I don't even know you. I want to stress that. I don't know who you are. If you look back at Matthew 7, Jesus would say in verses 21 and following, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" I'm reminded when I think about that, I'm not opening the door. Would you open the door to us too? Sir, sir. He said, "I don't know you." And we think, "Oh, that's harsh." They should have made preparations. I remember as a kid, my mother would say this to me every day before she went to work, and it was in the summertime and I was at home alone. She'd say, "Don't open the door to anyone you don't know." Well, that message has changed a little bit over the years. My message to my kids is, don't open the door. It's so bad, I'll be in my chair. Somebody will ring the doorbell, and the kids will say, "Are you going to answer the door?" I say, "I don't know. Who is it?" He said, "Well, it looks like somebody's selling something." "I'm not answering it." "Dad, you better see if you know them." Well, I'll look, and they can see me. And I say, "I'm not answering the door," and I'll go back and sit down. My kids are mortified. That's horrible. I don't have to answer that door. And if I don't know them, I'm not opening the door. Because I teach you the same thing. If you don't know them, don't open the door. If I want that, I'll go wherever they're selling it, I'll buy it. I don't want it. Now, I want to watch golf, leave me alone. That's kind of how it goes, right? But he's not going to open the door to someone he doesn't know. The 5 foolish were foolish because they didn't prepare for eternity, like so many people today. Eternity is an eternity away. I got till I'm 90 or 95 at least. We just talked about a 17-year-old that suffered a heart attack. And when that was announced, somebody behind me said, 17? 17! We don't know what's going to happen. But we know we're going to spend more time in eternity than we'll spend here. Why don't we live like it? Why don't we prepare for it? Man, we're preparing for vacations. We're preparing for the holidays. We're preparing for family get-togethers. We're stacking up food when it snows. Oh, my word. We're preparing for the snow, right? I don't know why everybody wants bread and milk, but we're getting some bread and milk, huh? Right? But we're preparing for things, but we don't talk about eternity. We don't think about eternity. We don't think about preparing for eternity. Let's move on. Lastly, let's talk about the 5 wise virgins. The 5 that are known as wise are known for being wise because they made proper preparations. Verse 4 says, "The wise, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps." May not need the extra oil, we don't know, but we're going to have it just in case. Made proper preparations. They were diligent. They thought ahead. They went above and beyond to prepare. It mattered to them. It was important to them. When something is important to you, you will take care of it. That's just it. It just boils down to that. And it was important to the 5 wise to get into this wedding banquet. So they said, "I don't know if we're going to need this extra oil or not, but we're going to have it just in case." And they went above and beyond to make sure they were prepared for this. Maybe the 5 foolish would look at the 5 wise and say, "Man, they are over the top. They are OCD. They are anal about this preparation thing." But let me say to you, shouldn't we be, when we're talking about preparing for eternity? I want to be a little OCD with that. I'm sorry, I do. I want to make sure that I'm prepared for eternity. As much as I love surprises, I don't want to be surprised on my day of death. I'm just not interested in that kind of surprise. I want to know full well that I'm good, that I'm going to be with God because I got a relationship with Him. Preparing for eternity, folks, is about living every day with eternity in mind. And if you live every single day and go through your daily routine, work, retire, school, whatever you do, every single day with eternity in mind, it will affect the way you live. It can't not. I don't know if that works in a sentence, but we just made it. It will change the way you live if you live with eternity in mind. But see, I'll tell you in a minute. Go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Preparing for eternity is knowing that this life is temporary. We're not going to be here long. We're just not going to be here long. It's interesting. My grandmother, one of my grandmothers, lived into her 90s. And what would we say about that? Well, that's a long life. Isn't that what we say? I remember doing a funeral of a lady many years ago, 99. She was a few months shy of being 100. And her family was just hoping she'd make it to 100. And she died at 99. And guess what? Everybody said, well, she lived a long life. But do you know what that lady said about her 99 years to me when we visited before her death? It went by like that. I'm going, 99 years? You kidding, lady? Really? I was in my 20s. I'm like, are you kidding? It's going to go by that fast. And the older you get, you see that, don't you? Yeah. 2 Corinthians 4. Verse 16, therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away. And you say, what does that mean? Just what it says. Outwardly, from the day of our birth until the day of our death, we are wasting away. The hair begins to recede, the hair begins to turn gray, our body begins to change, we lose muscle tone, we look totally different at 45 than we did at 25. Why? Because our body's wasting away. I've got this product and this product and this product. It doesn't matter. Your body's wasting away. Okay? You can mask it however you want to, but from the date of your birth, your body begins to waste. And that's what he's talking about, waste away. Though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Listen, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen. Why don't people prepare for eternity? Because they're so fixated on what they can see. We're so enamored with what we can look at and what we can touch that we don't think about what we can't see. You're in a good place when you start looking at what you can't see. Talked to an old friend yesterday. And I was describing a truck I had seen at the golf course. And I said, man, this is a beautiful truck. And we're just describing it and all that. And he said, yeah. And he said, but that stuff doesn't matter to us anymore, does it? And I said, no, because that beautiful truck comes with a big payment, and I don't want a big payment. So I'm just telling you, it was a pretty truck. And he said, it's interesting at our age, we just don't care about that stuff anymore. And I said, you're right. You're right. Because it's just stuff. It's just, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not important. It doesn't matter if your truck's pretty or if it's not pretty. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. We fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. And we're scratching our head going, okay, you want me to look at what I can't see. Listen, for what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. The things we can't see, the things that we can't touch, those are the things that are going to last. You see, preparing for eternity is about living by faith. In 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 7, he says, we live by faith, not by sight. We walk by faith, not by sight. Too many people are walking by sight. They're too engrossed in what they can see and what they can touch. They're too turned on with what they can see and what they can touch that they can't get past the physical to focus on the spiritual. And the spiritual is what really matters. I know there's some people you're not going to convince. But folks, this life is short. This life is going to fly by. And preparing for eternity is making sure we know God. 2 Thessalonians 1:8, remember what he said? I'm not going to open the door shut. I don't even know you. I don't even know you. 2 Thessalonians 1 verse 8, the context here is the second coming of Christ. And it says, he, Jesus, will punish those who do not know God and do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus. So, in order for me to prepare for eternity, I've got to obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, being baptized into Christ, have my sins washed away. Five were wise. May not need this extra oil, but we're going to have it. I want to be prepared just in case. Do you have that mindset? We're going on a trip. We're packing last night. We're leaving in the morning for the beach. And we're packing last night, and my wife said, "Are you carrying all this?" I want to make sure I'm prepared. I got to have collared shirts and some T-shirts. I got to be prepared. Don't know. We want to be prepared. And five were above and beyond. And five were not. The last time they took her into the hospital, she wouldn't be getting out. She was 18, dying with cystic fibrosis. With her parents and family members around the bed, the doctor came in and said, "We're going to have to put a tube in. And when we put a tube in, you're not going to be able to speak anymore." And this 18-year-old girl, she said, "Well, I want to do two things." And first of all, she said, "I want to pray." And so she prayed. And then she said, I want to sing a song. And she sang a song that we sang last week. God is so good. God is so good to me. How does an 18-year-old that's laying, hours from death, sing about how good God is? We're saying she's got the rest of her life ahead of her. She never married, never had kids, never went to college. She got her whole life ahead of her. And she wants to sing about how good God is. How does she do that? And there's one answer. She was prepared for eternity. She knew, she was a Christian, she knew that this was all going to come to end in minutes or hours, and that she wouldn't be in this failing body anymore. She wouldn't hurt. She wouldn't be, just cystic fibrosis literally just drowns its victims. And she knew, wouldn't feel that anymore, wouldn't struggle with that anymore. That she would be in eternity in heaven with God. God is so good to me. Folks, we got to make sure we're prepared for eternity. At the end of the day, that's what matters. That's all that matters. We could store everything up in this life and make sure we're prepared for the worst disaster or the worst famine or the worst anything. But if we're not prepared for eternity, it doesn't matter. This morning, if we can help you, we want to do that. We want to be here for you. We will have a shepherd up here waiting for you if you'll come. If you need to be baptized, please come. We will work our way around the cage, around the lines, and we will baptize you into Christ. Whatever your need is, would you come? Together we stand as we sing.